All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome, and if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Um, and if you are a returning viewer and you like what I'm doing here on this channel, and if you like what I'm doing here on this channel and you haven't yet subscribed, then please take the time to like the video, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you will be notified when I have new videos go up. Um, Okay, so I actually have a lot to talk about today. I want to talk. I want to talk more about the failure of Superman. Um, and I actually wanted to thank someone who came into my comments during my last, video that I did on the failure of Superman. And I want to take the time to say thank you to this person because they actually pointed out something that I didn't really consider, and that is the article that I chose for my video came from Cosmic Book News, and he actually said that Cosmic Book News isn't always reliable. So I just wanted to give a shout out to this person and just say thank you. Thank you, for bringing that to my attention. Um, I will be following up that news here in this video in a few minutes. But right now, I actually want to talk about Supergirl because we have more information on that. So let's get started. So yes, I want to talk about Supergirl, which hits theaters, which I've said in past videos, hits theaters uh, June 26th of next year. And now, now to remind people, this is the first. This will be the first, project in the DCU to not be directed or written by James Gunn. However, at this stage, I don't think it really matters whether he's writing or directing it or not, and I will tell you why. Because Warner Brothers is known for their interference with movies. They did it with the Hobbit trilogy. They did it with obviously, they did it with Batman versus Superman. They did it with Justice League. They did it with um they did it with they did it with the original Christopher Reeve Superman movies. They did it with um Superman 2. That's why we have the two that's why we have the two separate versions of Superman 2 now. We have, what Richard Lester did, and we have what Richard Donner did. So they did it with Superman 2, they did it with Batman Forever, they did it with David Ayer's Suicide Squad. So in the list could go on and on. But point being, they are known for their interference with other people's visions, and James Gunn is no different. Now there is now word on the street right now is that he is unofficially out as the head of DC Studios, and this comes from Cosmic Book News. um um and this comes from Cosmic Book News, and we're actually going to take a look at something else. At something else that I actually grabbed. Um, we're going to take a look at something else that I actually grabbed. So this is from Cosmic Book News. And it says here, with Superman reportedly being financially with sorry guys, I can't talk today. Um, with Superman reportedly bombing financially and with Peacemaker season 2 flopping with fans, I reached out to my insiders about the state of the DCU under James Gunn. And it says James Gunn out at DCU with James Gunn out at DC with Warner Brothers Discovery sale. And here's the picture. Now we already know for a fact that Warner Brothers is up for sale. Okay, that's a fact. Um, that is a fact, and I didn't realize this at first until much later. I had to do a fair amount of digging. Um, I had to do, a fair amount of digging. This might have been maybe like a year or two before, I started my channel, before I started making videos. But I did some digging and it, and uh, again, I can't talk today. I apologize. But apparently, Zaslav's plan was always to acquire Warner Brothers, and sell it off because he wanted to, sell it off to the highest bidder and make a profit. So, so we already know that the company is up for sale. Their stocks have been in the toilet now for quite a while. That's no secret. Um, that is no secret at all. Creature Commandos was a flop. Peacemaker was a flop. In fact, I already, um, in one of my past videos, I showed you guys, the viewership numbers for Peacemaker versus the viewership numbers for the Penguin. And obviously the Penguin, was much, 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 much higher. Um, excuse me, sorry. But so, so it is no secret that this company is up for sale. The cogs are moving. Everything is in place for this company to, to be bought and sold. Whether it's going to be, Paramount, whether it's going to be, Paramount Skydance, whether it's going to be, Comcast, whether it's going to be Netflix, whoever. But the, the point being, not enough people are taking to what James Gunn is doing. It's a fact. You guys can go, research it and, and stuff like that and see for yourself. But I am telling you right now, according to, everything, everything that has been going on, behind the scenes, everything, that I have been, everything that, that I have heard, read, seen, whatever, this company is going to be bought and sold off. And we're actually going to take a look at something else that I grabbed. And I wanted to bring this up because I feel like it is worth mentioning. And that is, and this comes from Variety. And this was, this was just a few days ago. This was like 5 days ago. Warner Brothers renews Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi's contracts after Sinners and Minecraft spark epic box office turnaround. So what happened here, I'm not going to read you guys the whole article because it would take too long and I really don't want to, waste people's time. But basically what that article talks about is Discovery head David Zaslav was actually meeting with people originally to replace, Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi because they were in, because the company, of Warner Brothers, Warner Brothers as a whole right now is not in a good place. And David Zaslav was actually, meeting with people to replace DeLuca and Abdi. But then we got, unexpected hits, like the unexpected hits like the Minecraft movie, which made well over $1 billion. Sinners, Sinners, did, very, very well at the box office. And I will actually read you guys a tiny bit of what I have here, but it says a few months ago, Hollywood was convinced that Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi were about to be fired as co-heads at Warner Brothers Pictures. What a difference a few hits and one epic comeback can make. And it says here on Wednesday, Warner Brothers Discovery chief David Zaslav confirmed in an again, I can't talk today. In an internal note to staff that DeLuca and Abdi's contracts were being renewed. Were being renewed for an unspecified amount of time. So their contracts are renewed. Their contracts are officially renewed, but we don't know. But we don't know yet. But we don't know yet. For for how long. For how long. Their contracts are going to go on for before they need to get renewed again. And it says, when I first arrived at the studio, oh, wait, no. So, yeah, here we are. So Zaslav, who had been reportedly, who had reportedly been interviewing replacements for DeLuca and Abdi earlier this year, in the wake of flops like Joker Folia Deluxe, The Alto Knights, and Mickey 17, praised the duo for surpassing 4 billion, excuse me, at the global box office with just 11 films. So this again, so this is very, very good news that their contracts, have officially been renewed. Now, I think it's worth mentioning now, and I think it's worth reminding people again that James Gunn's contract expires next year, and Peter Safran's contract expires this year, I believe in November. And right now, the fact that DeLuca and Abdi's contracts were just recently renewed, but Gunn's and Safran's contracts have not, should definitely raise an eyebrow or two. Because it's like, why would you renew, Abdi's, and DeLuca's contracts, but not renew Gunn and Safran's unless you had plans, to not renew them. So that's what I think is going on right now. And, and I definitely find it, very, very suspicious, and very, very interesting that their contracts got renewed, that DeLuca's and Abdi's contracts got renewed, but Gunn and Safran still have not. So this, so I think, so this is, this is very telling. This is very telling. And I also wanted to bring up something that I grabbed something that I grabbed from that Park Place. And um, if you guys remember, um, I did a video some months back on the Henry Cavill versus, on the James Gunn versus the Henry Cavill timeline. And that article was actually from, that Park Place. Um, and, in there I did a recap of that entire, of that entire story and and what went wrong with it. So, or, and what went wrong with, Cavill's time as Superman. Um, so it says here, after months of speculation about the financial outcome of James Gunn's Superman, a new report from Forbes has made the situation plain. The film reportedly did not recoup costs uh, during its theatrical run. Um, and then it says, while writer Tim Lammers stopped short of using the word flop, uh, his own math makes it clear that Superman lost money in theaters, and Warner Brothers is now depending on digital and streaming sales to fill the gap. So, bottom line, this movie lost money. It doesn't matter, which way you spin it. Uh, you know, James Gunn, the studio, the Guntards, they can spin it however they want. It's not going to change the facts. And the facts are this movie lost money. This movie lost the studio a lot of money. Okay. And it doesn't matter, that they greenlit a sequel. You fail upwards at Warner Brothers Discovery. Um, yeah, and this is even, and this is even, and this is telling too. The numbers don't lie. According to Forbes, Superman closed its domestic run on October 2nd, 2025, after 84 days in theaters. The film earned um 354.2 million uh domestically and 261 point million internationally, for a worldwide total of 615.8 million. So, so again, this is very telling. And again, you need to take into account, and I know I've talked about this, to death, here on the channel, but I'm going to keep bringing it up, and I'm going to keep, drilling it in until people, understand this. But these are all things that need to be taken into account. Okay. You need to take into account the fact that movie tickets cost more than they did 12 years ago when Man of Steel first came out. Okay. You need to take into account the fact that you need to take into account how box office works. Okay. And that is, movie theaters take 50% of the ticket sales, and then they divide that up evenly among themselves and with the studio. Okay. Now, the movie's budget is also something that you also need to take into account. And I talked about this as well in my previous video. This movie had a budget of 350 million. It had a 225 production budget and 125 marketing budget, and that's obviously a total of 350 million. Okay, so, and then you need to factor in, like the cost, and you need to factor in, stuff like cost. You need to take inflation into account. All these things All these things that a lot of people are going to say, oh, that doesn't matter. The movie made a profit, blah, 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 blah. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Because these are all things that need to be taken into account when you're making a movie. And you also need to take into account, where directors get their money from. They obviously get that money, from the studio. These are all things that need to be taken into account. So, um, yeah. And then another thing, I will say this though, even Superman, uh, y- even though Superman, did bomb in theaters, it is a possibility that it could make a small profit through streaming and video on demand. It is possible. However, the fact that it bombed in theaters is definitely a problem. And but I want to switch over to Supergirl for a minute. I want to talk about the thumbnail for a minute. So Supergirl is, of course, as I said before, scheduled to come out June, 2026 of next, June 26th, of next year. And there is a report going around. There is a report going around the there is a report going around that Supergirl is a fucking mess. And I do not doubt this for a second. Now, while yes, there still has yet to be, official, confirmation, from a legit source that this is true. I do not doubt for a second that this is the case, because Superman was a mess, and Supergirl, and I'm going to read to you guys what I have here. Obviously, it says Gunn, and this comes from Rolling Stone. Um, uh, Gunn recently told Rolling Stone, Supergirl especially is a space adventure. It's like Guardians of the Galaxy. After wrapping Peacemaker season 2, which just happens to be, and this is important too, guys. After wrapping Peacemaker season 2, which just so happens to have the lowest rated final on IMDb. So, so there you have it, guys. Not enough people are catering to what Gunn is doing. This entire DCU is in trouble. It's a fact. It's a fact. Remember how many people, you know, uh, my last video when I talked about how many households, in the US, watch the Penguin. The fact is there's not enough of an audience for these projects. And I know a lot of people are going to come at me and say, "Oh, well, look at the money, that Guardians made. Look at the reviews, that Guardians got. Reviews don't matter. They never have. You know, reviews, reviews don't bring money in. Reviews don't bring people to the theater. It might get Reviews might get, like, if you are someone like who cares about reviews, if you are someone who cares about reviews, if you are someone who like if you're someone, like who's curious about, like what a movie got on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, or if you just, or if you just like to know, like what kind of reviews a movie got, you might be someone, that goes, oh, okay, it got, X amount of reviews. It got, X amount of good reviews on, so and so. So I guess, so I guess, this is a good movie to go see, so I'll go see it. But but you got to remember, not, reviews, but at the same time, you got to remember that reviews don't make a good movie. Reviews don't mean, it's a good movie. And that is what, and that is, that is what happened with that, that is what usually happens with James Gunn stuff. Like like it might be certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but excuse me, sorry. It might be certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. Especially when you factor in, that Warner Brothers has an ownership in Rotten Tomatoes. So, so saying, oh, it was certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Rotten Tomato scores, don't bring money in. Rotten Tomato scores, don't bring, people to the theater. They don't put food on the table. They don't, they don't keep a roof over your head. Money does. So, um, so I, so me personally, I do not doubt for a second that this is true. Um, I will, of course, wait, until, until we get more, like concrete, um, proof, that this report is legit. But do I doubt it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because James Gunn, James Gunn only knows how to do one thing and one thing only, and that is team up projects. He has never done, he has a literal incapacity to focus on just one character. And I've had a lot of people come at me lately and say, "Oh, Superman was, Superman, was a solo Superman movie." No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. You had the engineer, you had Metamorpho, you had Guy Gardner, you had Mr. Terrific, you had Hawkgirl, you had Ultraman, you had you had Crypto, you had all these other characters thrown in there. You had all these other characters thrown in there. And and let me remind people, Mr. Terrific played a very, very crucial part of the movie's plot, and so did Guy Gardner. So, so this was not, calling, you know calling Superman 2025 a solo Superman movie, makes about as much sense as calling, makes about as much sense as calling, Batman versus Superman, a solo Batman and or Superman movie. And it wasn't. It was an ensemble movie. Superman the movie is a solo Superman movie. Superman 2 is a solo Superman movie. Batman Begins is a solo Batman movie. The Dark Knight is a solo Batman movie. Batman 89 is a solo Batman movie. So, so you can't, so so don't even try, you can, you can spin this however, you know, these people can spin this however they want. Point being, it's not true. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is the future of DC and what is going to happen if and what's going to happen when this deal is complete. So there is a rumor going around that Mike DeLuca there is a rumor going around that when this purchase, that when this deal goes through, Mike DeLuca will be looking to do like a complete reset of everything, of DC as a whole. Excuse me, sorry. Of DC as a whole. I think that this would be a mistake for a couple reasons. One being, obviously, one obviously being a lot of people still want to see the Snyderverse come back, myself included. And a lot of people really want to see the conclusion, of that, of that, universe. And the problem with rebooting, when you still have, like this huge chunk, when you still have, like this huge, chunk, that's unfinished, it doesn't make for a cohesive narrative. And this goes back to something that I probably should have brought up earlier, and that's Warner Brothers, friggin' sucks at finishing what they start. The only things that they've ever been able to finish are the Dark Knight trilogy and Harry Potter. And, and that's another thing, like imagine, and it is officially confirmed, that Harry Potter, is getting rebooted. But imagine if they decided to just scrap, the Daniel Radcliffe stuff and just reboot, Harry Potter halfway through, just because they could, because that's exactly what they did with DC. That's exactly what they did with DC. They got rid of Snyder, just because they could, and they just decided to reboot. And obviously, and look where we are now. Everything is a mess. So, so point being, and I'm, me personally, I am not at all against rebooting. Obviously, you would have to reboot anyway. You would obviously have to reboot anyway in order to keep, if you wanted to keep, this universe going, which, obviously they do. So, but point being, finish what you started, finish what you start and then reboot, which obviously, was the plan, back, back when, Snyder was still there. But, so, and whether, and if what I heard is true, because there is because word on the street right now is they are looking to have this deal, this this buyout, finalized by next year, early next year. I think they're looking to have this done, to have this finalized as early as April. And in all honesty, the sooner the better, because the DC brand is in the toilet right now. Nothing is working. We don't have, and James Gunn is doing, all the things that he said he wouldn't do when he was first brought in. He said he wouldn't, make the same mistakes as the MCU, he said he wouldn't be, He said he wouldn't make the same mistakes, that the MCU has made. Here he is making those same mistakes. He said he wouldn't be looking to interfere, uh, with other people's visions. Here he is doing that. According, again, if these reports are true, which again, I don't doubt for a second that they are, or, that they aren't. Um, and point being, he is not delivering, what he said he was going to. And in a past video, I know I talked about, what the DC's, what his chapter one slate was originally going to be. That chapter one slate is constantly changing because James Gunn cannot, for the life of him, make up his mind about what he wants to do, for this DCU. And when you have to come out, when you constantly need to come out and explain things to people, about when you constantly need to come out and explain things to people about what you're doing, about what you're doing and what is going on, in your own projects, it means you're not doing your job correctly. You know, and it's like, look at, go back, and again, I'm going to use Marvel as an example because it's, because it's much easier, than, anything else. But, go back, but, go back 10 years to when, the Infinity Saga was going on. Do you ever remember a time when Kevin Feige and or Disney or whoever, do you ever remember a time when they had to come out and explain, like what was going on or what had just happened, in one of their movies? Exactly. I don't either. So, and that's obviously because, they didn't, because you know, because people like John Favreau, Joe Johnston, the Russo brothers, you know, those people all did their jobs correctly. There was a plan and they stuck to it. And I know, and I know for a fact I brought that up in past videos as well. So, so point being, there is no plan here. When you're constantly, when you announce something and you say, okay, when when you announce something and you constantly, when you come out and say, okay, we're going to do this, and this, and then you're constantly changing it just because you can, that means you don't have a plan. That means there is no plan. And and obviously, this is a problem. This is just this is just one of many reasons why DC, why the DC brand, or the movie brand, is struggling right now because they can't, make up their minds about what they want to do. Well, James Gunn can't make up his mind about what he wants to do. So now let's talk about my hopes for the future if, when this purchase, is finalized. I really, really want, I really want a cohesive, I really, really want a cohesive, narrative. I really want to see movies like, uh, like Zack Snyder came out recently and said that, he still very much wants to do a Dark Knight Returns, movie, an adaptation, like a direct adaptation of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, which I think would be absolutely incredible. Um, which I think would be absolutely incredible. But obviously, but obviously that wouldn't happen under the current regime of Warner Brothers. It just wouldn't. Um, but I really, really want to see like a cohesive. I really, really want to see like a cohesive, you know, universe, narrative, whatever you want to call it. I really, really want to see, these characters. I really want to see these characters, done in a way, that not only respects, the source material and, and their, and their mythos, but at the same time, do it in a way that, that respects, the core of who these characters are in their universe. And, and obviously James Gunn, doesn't obviously, he doesn't, he doesn't, James Gunn obviously doesn't know how to do that. I am sick and tired of, I'm so sick and tired of team up projects. I'm sick and tired of, ensemble, ensemble movies. You know, James Gunn doesn't know how to do anything else other than Guardians of the Galaxy. He just doesn't. He doesn't. Every single project that he has done for DC, has been an ensemble project. And it's such a creatively bankrupt uh it's such a creatively bankrupt formula, especially when especially when it's been done, to the extent uh especially when it's been done to the extent that that it has with with James Gunn. And and I'm just, I will say though, one thing I can say though is New York Comic Con just happened recently, and we are getting an animated adaptation of Batman Nightfall. We are getting a 4-part um animated adaptation of Batman Nightfall, where Bane, um I actually have the books um over here. In fact, um oh, oh, I actually have the books right here. um I have part 1 actually in my room. um Excuse me, but this is getting an animated adaptation. And this is definitely something to look forward to. This is going to be phenomenal, because this is something that a lot of fans, over the years have been have been screaming for. This is something, I this is something that I can't tell you how many times, when a new DC animated movie was announced, I can't tell you how many times, when a new DC animated movie was announced online, and they announced, the next one that was coming out. I can't tell you how many people in the comments said, Batman Nightfall, Batman Nightfall, Batman Nightfall. People have been screaming for an adaptation, of this series, of this series for years, and it's finally happening. And it's finally happening. Um, this this is something that's going to draw a lot of fans in. I'm telling you right now, part 1 is supposed to be coming out next year. There is no there's no set release date yet, other than at some point next year. Um, I would think it would come out early next year, but again, that's just a guess. I have nothing to back it up right now. Um, but we will see what happens. But um, we will see what happens. But word on the street right now is that James Gunn is unofficially out as the head of DC Studios. And I really, really hope that this is true, because I have not been able to care about anything DC, anything DC for a while now. So I really, 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 really hope that this is true. Um, but again, only time will tell. Only time will tell. In fact, I did hear that we are supposed to be getting some sort of announcement by the end of the year, either by the end of the year or before the end of the year, one of the two. But we will see what happens. We will see what happens. Again, only time will tell. But I will, of course, I will keep you guys updated, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.